dogs in the yard might need a guard. Every loss taken to heart. Me first, that cannot be. Must be these underdog episodes, see? Feeling much better, so suddenly under the Monica G. Crafted at night while all of them sleep. I won't look a fool, taking this tool, defeating the opposition around me. No, I'm not sorry. Yes, I'm taking this knowledge and pride. Just barking no harm, don't be startled. Yes, I'm taking the title, and it's so vital. Thanks for the ride, I'll never be idle. Turn up the dial, it's about to get wild, and the points gon' pile up.
Dynasty Underdog bite down, up at the day and the night. Now, easy as flying a kite. Now, come take a look at it right now. Dynasty Underdog bite down, up at the day and the night. Now, easy as flying a kite. Now, come take a look at it right now.
Welcome to episode 128 of Dynasty Underdog. Billy Beeman here as always, and got with me Josh and Uriah. How's it going, guys?
Good, man. How are you tonight?
Doing really good, man. How's it going?
Good. Excited to get into some slot data and, keep talking about that. And we got some other fun stuff tonight too, for sure. But we got to get started with some news and nonsense, of course. And there's a bit out there. There's some movement, I think, with coaching and whatnot. We can talk about real quick some quarterbacks, though, for sure, I think, right? Like, a lot going on. Let's get it started with Lamar Jackson, right? Lamar Jackson, is he – I don't know, is he going to stay with Baltimore? Is he going to split? We see Greg Roman's out, his offensive coordinator of a long time. What do you think about Lamar's value right now?
I mean, I think it's lower than it was last season. I mean, he's missed 6 games in back-to-back seasons. I mean, what else is there really to say? I mean, I think he'll be back with Baltimore because I think they're going to give him the highest value. But, I mean, we've seen rumors out there, the Jets, the Dolphins, etc. But I really think for what he wants to do, he'll be staying in Baltimore.
Yeah, I would think if Baltimore's smart, we already know they're not because they let it get to this point. But, talked about it, when he was missing games, kind of like, I don't think he's going to play the rest of the year because he hurt his knee. He didn't have a contract. And in my opinion, very smartly, he said, hey, I'm not risking it, I think it might be less likely he's coming back to Baltimore now. Greg Roman out. I don't know. I think there's probably like bad blood, right? I think he's probably like, let me get out of here. Let me get somewhere else that really appreciates me. As far as his dynasty value, it's probably the lowest it's going to be in a long time. He's still so good. Recency bias and all that other stuff. Like, he's still such a baller. Like, he's definitely somebody I would explore trying to get cheaper than you ever could before.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I've heard mixed opinions on the Greg Roman thing, it meaning he's going to be out or not. Like, I think the entire DFF chat was like, yeah, this means Lamar Jackson staying with Baltimore.
Oh,
like, okay. Well, because I think a lot of people, Greg Roman limited Lamar Jackson. That was kind of the narrative, right? He's really focused on the run game, doesn't really have a very good passing attack or anything. It's very vanilla, right? His passing attack. So it didn't really help Lamar or Baltimore at all. So I think some see it as a positive that he's gone, and maybe it'll help Lamar out. So in that respect, like, I mean, Lamar's the kind of guy who I think has so much upside. He's worth, exploring buying in Dynasty. As far as drafts go, like, we have one coming up. I'm later in the draft. He probably won't fall to me, but he's the kind of guy who can fall to the 12 spot, the 2 spot, or I mean the 2.01 spot, and like, you can get value there. So as far as startups go, I think he's probably going to be a value, and right now trades for sure. So I think there's something there. I did trade him for Trevor Lawrence in a third, I think, a couple of weeks back or a month or so ago. So I think you might be able to, I don't know, it might be evening out now with this news. It depends what manager you get. But anyway.
This could be good for Bateman. I know you're not the biggest fan.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of us out there that are. And if Greg Roman is run first approach to offensive coordinating, maybe this is good for, a really good wide receiver like Bateman. So something to keep an eye on. And I know you could get him cheap. So relatively.
That's a great one. I think, again, that's somebody who came up when I was discussing this earlier, and we're talking about maybe like a late second for Bateman. If you can get that done before things turn up, it's probably, regardless of what you think of him, it's probably a good buy low. So that's something to think about. Yeah. All right. we have another offensive coordinator out, tied to one of the best of all time, the best of all time. What am I talking about? What do we do with Tom Brady? Right, Leftwich is out. Tom Brady's obviously not coming back, so really it's about to be blown up in Tampa Bay. So all these guys are kind of their values up in the air. But let's talk about Brady, because who knows what the hell's going to happen with him. What do you think? Where do you think he ends up? I got my money on Vegas. What do y'all think?
Vegas for sure.
I wanted to be contrarian, but yeah, Vegas. Like it seems like maybe there was reports of him wanting to go to the Dolphins, but he wanted to stay in the NFC East and like beat Bill or something. I don't know. The Jets could use a quarterback.
That they could. I've heard that rumor out there a little bit too. That's not a bad idea. I mean, he would be coming back to the AFC East, facing his former team a couple times a year. I don't know how he'd feel about that, but yeah, it would be easier than.
There's good weapons there. Good defense. Anything you could want for, slot in a really good quarterback and make a playoff push. Like I don't know if the Raiders even have that. Like I don't think the Raiders roster or coach, front office, anything like that really matches kind of what the Jets have, which everybody's like laughs at the Jets, but like they had a decent year with the scrubs that they had. Like I don't know, if I was Brady, I think I'd be more willing to go play for the Jets than the Raiders, unless he just wants to be in Vegas.
I feel that. Would you pay a second for Brady right now if you were QB? If you were hurting on QB,
no.
Would you sell him for a third?
No, so I had him, then I probably need him and just hope that he comes back. Like we don't even know if he's going to come back. I mean, you assume he will because, like, quote unquote, he threw his life away for football or something like that. Right? That's the narrative. I'm sure there's a whole lot of other stuff going on in there. For them to get divorced, but I don't want to invest much in something so uncertain. I guess I don't know, but I've been saying that for like 3 years, and he's been pretty decent ever since he left the Patriots.
Yeah. If you have a couple thirds, it's probably worth sending out and seeing if you can snag him. If you're like a contender type team hurting on QB2 or something like that.
Sure,
I think he might be worth it. All right, and another one. Why not? McVay's actually coming back though. He didn't get fired or he didn't leave, so that's nice. But McVay is coming back with the Rams, which is good news, I think, for Cooper Kupps and all the weapons there. But definitely Matthew Stafford, who I think is pretty, certain to come back this year at least. Who knows what happens with him after that? But what do you think about him for a buy low? Like, would you send like a 2024 second for Stafford?
I feel more comfortable around a third. I mean, I know it wouldn't probably get accepted, but just because of his injury history and this injury this last round, I just feel a second might be too much of a gamble personally.
Yeah, I'd send a second, sure. Because I think that, I think a lot of what happened with Stafford this year was just because he had that injury and just was never quite the same. And he had so much time off now. And he's still relatively young. And McVay's still pretty good at football. So I think it's a safer bet to send something like that. Because last year you couldn't get him for, you need a first plus, right?
Yeah.
So if you could send a second now, and I think you probably still get like a couple of years out of him, I think it's worth it. I think this is really good for Cooper Kupp as a guy that like I've been kind of fading based on age and all the other stuff. But like, if I know that we got McVay and a healthy Stafford, I think Cooper Kupp's worth investing in for one more run it back type season. So, and that might be all he has. We'll see.
I'm right there with you, man. I love that take. All right.
So
yeah, thank you. one day I'll come on here without a hat and show my new haircut. But until then, I'm just gonna keep rotating them.
It's all good.
And we'll see what happens. It's fun. So yeah, we've been stalling long enough. Can we talk about some slot rate data?
We can. I've been going through the database a little bit. It's pretty interesting.
All right, cool. Yeah. So I pulled this last year, and I probably could have pulled 3 years and kind of looked at it there, but I was just being kind of quick about it. And when we looked at it last year, it kind of showed the same results after analyzing it and looking at the 2022 slot rate data, this past year's data, just looking at, fantasy points from the slot, slot rate, how many snaps from the slot, that kind of thing. Percentage of fantasy points from the slot. If I said that already, I think I just said slot fantasy points. So slot targets, that kind of stuff. We're just looking at all different kind of metrics related to the wide receivers playing out of the slot position, right? Which is not playing out wide, it's playing in close. If you're listening to this, you know what the hell a slot receiver is. I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
So really, so what I really wanted to get into and why I kind of dove into the slot data was because there's been a lot of talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba, the incoming rookie wide receiver out of Ohio State, and he mainly played out of the slot like 88.9% of his snaps and production. Or I think it was snaps. Actually, I don't know if they have the production data for college, but snaps came out of the slot in college in the most meaningful year he played, which was not last year, but the year prior in 2021. So, I mean, he is a slot receiver. There's no two ways about it, right? But a lot of people are talking about him in a negative light with that, like he can't succeed because of that, right? And I think some of it may be due to size. Like we go through this every year, right? He's not that big and this, that, and the other. But I think that part of it we can kind of move past. I think after last year with Devonta Smith and the whole nine. So what I really wanted to do, I wrote an article about this for Dynasty Football Factory, and I'm going to read a part of it, which is just like the numbers portion. And I think it highlights a lot of why we shouldn't be concerned about guys who play a lot of the slot in college or are projected to in the pros. But big shout out to Dynasty Football Factory. It's my website. Please go sign up and read this full article because it is awesome. But the numbers, let's get into it. So if you're so concerned about slot production, let's take a look at the 2022 fantasy slot rate data to discover what is actually happening, right? So what I want to highlight is the top 10 scorers in fantasy production per game who had at least 50 snaps from the slot, right? So that's what we're looking at. The top 10 scorers, fantasy points per game, 50 snaps from the slot. That list is Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Devonta Adams, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins. Okay? 4 of the top 10 were either 40% slot rate above 40% slot rate or above 40% fantasy points per game from the slot, right? Mm-hmm. Those 4 are Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? And so there's a variety of style of receiver here too, which I think is really interesting to see. There's Cooper Kupp, who's, big body, physical, Tyreek Hill, super fast, CeeDee Lamb, kind of a mix of everything, Amon-Ra St. Brown, really the guy who kind of matches most to JSN here, the guy kind of I'm using for this. So if we expand it to the top 24 receivers from 2022 using the same 40% threshold, we find Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Devonta Smith, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk, right? So in all, we're looking at some of the premier receiver talents in the league, most with a good portion of their snaps and fantasy production coming from the slot. Okay, we can even look at players below the 40% threshold, right? Then you find Justin Jefferson producing 6.29 fantasy points per game. That's top 12 in the category. And 29.6% of his overall fantasy points from the slot. So, again, why are we bothered by this? This seems like a really good thing to me. And I think we need to start viewing slot receivers in a different way, especially the ones who are coming in from college, not really, marking them down for it. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, I mean, I love this kind of stuff. This is something I think that, at least for me as a fantasy player or dynasty player, I kind of caught on to. I must have read an article by somebody super smart, that I just can't remember their name right now. But, especially playing in PPR, which I think most of us do, you get a lot of slot targets. And so I always tried to build rosters where a lot of my later round picks were strictly slot receivers because they're going to get that, 6 target plus game every game, unless you're really good, right? Mm-hmm. But just putting that here, the top 24 players, half of them are primarily slot guys in fantasy points per game.
Right.
The case you're trying to make for JSN, it's solid. It's at this point, with all the data that we have and how the game is growing and more information is out there, especially free information, readily available to us, we shouldn't shy away from slot-only type receivers. You're going to miss out on the Cooper Kupps. You're going to miss out on the Amon-Ra St. Browns, Chris Godwin, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's been a beast for forever, right? Since before, So I think this is great. I don't think a lot of people who just play the game casually or whatnot really do look at the numbers like this and realize just how nonsensical it is to, I don't know, shy away from slot only receivers. There aren't a whole lot of Demaryius Thomases or Megatrons or Des Bryants anymore, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We don't see that. Like, we don't have that big X receiver anymore. Things are changing. Maybe it has something to do with the size of defensive players, the linebacker play, size of cornerbacks now in the defense and modern defenses compared to having a bigger but maybe slower X receiver when you can have a shifty slot receiver who could get open really, really, really well against like zone coverage and stuff like that. So I'm not afraid of JSN whatsoever.
Yeah, and it's like JSN was almost just this year's example, right? Of kind of like what I'm getting at, which is we shouldn't be afraid of these kind of guys at all. We should be targeting them, and they also don't have to just work out of the slot, right? Like we're talking about like CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs. Like you would think all these guys are out wide all the time, right? But they're not. Like the coordinators are taking advantage of mismatches on the inside, on linebackers, on nickel corners. Like they're taking advantage, they're scheming up, and there's a reason they're doing this. So it's not only should we not be concerned about elite talent that is working out of the slot, whether that's what they do the most, whether it's, they're smaller and they don't work out wide that much, whatever it is, we should, it's not something we should be shying away from. We should definitely be looking for guys who are schemed into that often and who play often and who get targeted often. And we want them, right? And it sounds obvious in a way, but it does seem that like some of these guys will get a knock for that. And obviously not like the top end ones that we're talking about. But the point is that they can produce a lot more of their fantasy points from that position. And you want guys in that position if you can. And when there's elite talents coming out like JSN, like what are we doing? Like who cares where they play from? Yeah. They're going to dominate, especially against lesser talent in the slot. Okay. That was fun.
I think one of the cool names on here, I think we talked about this last year, was Jalen Waddle. Yeah. And the amount of targets and stuff that he received last year, like I think he set a record or something like that, or damn near. And then he's playing almost 20% out of the slot. Like, remember, we're talking about him scouting from college, like, oh, he's going to stretch the field and he's going to get, a couple long bombs a game. But no, he's in there working it. And that's just a smart use of a really, really good talent at wide receiver. So,
yeah. I mean, I'm just scrolling down the list here and I'm just looking, I see Jacoby Myers, 51% slot rate, 44% of his production out of the slot. And like, it's obvious, but the dude was a beast. And it's because he's, up against mismatches and taking advantage of it.
This is a little off topic, but me and Josh were talking on before we started recording. And I see that we have Richie James here, 6th on the list in slot rate.
Yes.
Which is nuts.
Which is nuts, yeah. 75% of the time. But this is more about the Giants wide receivers. Billy.
Okay.
Are you interested in any of them? Isn't it? It's really hard to.
I am.
Are you okay?
Wan'Dale Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Okay. that's my answer
like
too.
All this is encouraging about it, all this is.
Oh, he's on the list too.
He is somewhere on here, but yeah, it's encouraging to see them using players like this because Wan'Dale Robinson is a much greater talent compared to Richie James or Isaiah Hodgins. Hodgins, I don't know about his contract status, but I assume it's not long, probably a free agent. He's probably going to get signed somewhere after this run. So no, I don't have any interest in that. But Richie James, maybe, I don't know. How old is Richie James? I don't even know what, like he could have been in the league for 10 years. I wouldn't have known it. But,
I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean,
he's 27.
Yeah. See?
Yeah. I think the only one I would be is Wan'Dale Robinson right now, because I have a feeling they're going to try to fix that up this coming off season, whether it's draft or free agency. So there's going to be a lot of changes there with how well they're playing. Daniel Jones is going to get another shot. They have Barkley. It's man. It's looking good for them.
Yeah, it's just like one of those situations where you're like, I'm thinking you want to try to get ahead on a up and coming offense, and after what the Giants have done this year, you're kind of looking at the pieces like, okay, what part of these do I want to invest in? And I'm looking at the wide receivers. I'm like, I just don't want any really. Like, I don't know. I don't want to miss out on, potential, cheap production, but I'm not very interested. So just wanted to get your opinion, I guess.
All right. Yeah. Well, before we move on, real quick, I do want to give a shout out to Zach Reed at Tacit Assassin. We've had him on here. I was actually talking to him. We'll have him on sometime in February to talk draft, talk the rookies and stuff like that. But him and I were chopping it back and forth about this, and he called this out that people were going to be down on JSN like a year ago. Last December, I think he called it out that this was going to happen, and so give him a shout out there, and also shout out Chris Miles helping me get this data at DFF Director, DFF staff writer. So yeah, man, this is always fun to do. Honestly, it's funny with the slot rate stuff. Like you always think like this kind of stuff's going to be longer, but sometimes like to make your point, it really doesn't take that long. It's just kind of right in front of your face, and you just need to point it out. But all right, let's move on real quick here. Let's talk about eliminating the tight end position. I've seen this on Twitter a lot, and I thought it was an interesting topic. What do you like? I think it depends on what you think it means. Like, I don't know what you think it means, but to me, it means just eliminating the spot and making it so that you can start one, but you don't have to. So you just change it to a flex spot, right? Instead of it being a tight end spot, and people can still draft tight ends and still start them. So do you have an issue with that, or do you
kind of, because I mean, just in general, if you're playing it, I think you should have set positions. And yes, obviously a flex or super flex or whatever, but because I mean, if they eliminate the tight end, then why not just eliminate running back and wide receiver and just have everything flex?
I think a lot of people would like it that way.
Yeah. If that's the case, I'm completely down for it. But don't just eliminate one position group just because.
Yeah.
I feel like, there's like 3 tight ends, right? And then there's everybody else like bargain binning. And depending on how you structure your team, you could still win without having Kelsey, right? It could happen, but
it could happen.
It could happen.
There's possibility.
But if you make it to where like you don't have to start one, whoever is starting Mark Andrews or whoever is starting Kelsey's still gonna have a leg up. I think when you see this come up and people are trying to fix a problem that's not really a problem, it just means you need to draft your stud tight end sooner, or just face the consequences, right?
I like that. I
mean, that's what it is.
You got to deal with it and figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to add another stud wide receiver to your team, so you're making up that extra production with, I don't know, Dawson Knox in your tight end position and hope for a touchdown. But that's the reason why Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Kittle, those guys, they go for so much, is because they're so valuable. There's no way to fix it, And Kelsey's not going to be in the league forever, so things could change. But I don't know. Maybe it sounds old school, but I'm not down for just like eliminating it altogether. I think the way it is now is fine.
Sure. I mean, I think some people would say if you have it as a flex spot, then the person can draft Travis Kelce as high as they want, the same way. And then I can draft a wide receiver that I think is going to score, similar points per game, and I can play him in that flex spot instead of having to play a tight end. So I think that's where people are coming from. Is fine. Like, how does it hurt the people who go get the tight ends? It only helps the people who don't. I'm generally a traditionalist, so like I kind of lean your guys' way too, just to make it as tough as possible on ourselves and everybody else. But but I do think that there is something to making it where you can start 0, but you can also start a tight end if you want. Just change it into a flex spot. It may work out. I don't know if it's going to hurt the variance or help the variance of team building, but in Dynasty, I don't think it really matters because you have so many different ways you can do stuff. So I don't hate it. I probably I don't know if I would run a league that way, but I don't hate it. I don't know. I'm kind of being swayed towards it.
What if you just like nuke the tight end spot? We have tight end premium and like a ton of our leagues. I think everyone I'm in is tight end premium except for any of my like redraft leagues. Yeah. What if you do the opposite and you nuke them? Everybody else is 1 point PPR, but tight ends are half point PPR. And then it's like they don't matter at all then.
Well, only the top end matter. Like then it does like it like doubles the effect of what people say
I
about
don't
tight
know.
end
There's-
premium, right?
Yeah.
That's
I don't
right.
know. There's no good way. Like I don't know if it needs to be fixed. Like necessarily. I think that like there's. I mean, I guess changing it to a flex position does technically fix it because then you can start a similar player or that scores a similar amount of points per game as a Travis Kelce or something.
That's true.
In that spot. Yeah, I think that's the way that you technically fix it. But I mean, I don't think it needs to be fixed necessarily. It's fine the way it is. You just with having to start a tight end, you do need to prioritize it, and you do need to like just go trade. Like if you want to be a top contender in the league, go trade for one of the top ones, like top 3, top 4 guys. Like TJ Hawkinson would have won you so much. It's like so much this year. It's insane. He helped me get there, but then Uriah beat me anyway. Okay. Let's move on. I saw another one on Twitter, Pollard versus Swift. I saw somebody say that they would rather have Pollard over Swift, more dynamic, more burst. I don't know, a whole bunch of other stuff. I really can't get there, but what do y'all think?
No, Swift all day.
Okay, wow, that was a fast one.
Well,
okay.
I mean, we should still talk about it a little bit, but
I mean, trade Tony Pollard is the conclusion.
That's
here,
a move.
right?
Yeah,
it is a move. I mean, again, we talked about this last week before. Like Tony Pollard, I know he hasn't had like a ton of wear and tear, but he's old. As far as running backs go, I mean, nobody really wants to talk about that. Swift is not. Swift had a down year. Swift's rookie year, he had a knee thing in training camp, and I don't think he started week 1. I think it was a couple weeks in before he really got going. Swift is still a better talent than Tony Pollard. Swift is attached to a pretty good team. They're on the up and up, right? You know, Dan Campbell, the fighting Dan Campbells, as we like to call them now.
Nice.
Well, you know, they are. But Tony Pollard, we don't know where he's going to be next year. You know, we have to say this all the time, but like, is he still going to be as good and dynamic on a different team? Is he back with the Cowboys? Cool. Then he's still, your low end RB2 type, high end RB2 type. I don't know. I don't think that that's something that you could try to do right now today, because there's just so much uncertainty with Tony Pollard and where he's going to be next year. At least we know what's going on with Swift. There's a high chance that Jamal Williams isn't there next year, and we could all hope that Swift truthers could hope that Swift gets the full workload, and if that does happen, like it's not even close. So I think that's insane, and I do believe that maybe it is just another sign to sell Tony Pollard.
Yeah, to Uriah's point, Pollard is 25 years old and 264 days. So he's coming up here. Mm-hmm. He's coming up here on 26. And that's the area historically where running backs tend to dip in production, usage, all that. Now, I think Tony Pollard, being the kind of player he is, not used as often or as a workhorse, he probably has an extra year or two there. But still, man, if I can go get Swift, who's many years younger than him, and like you said, on a team that I really like, that has a lot, high hopes for the future. Yeah, I mean, I think I would absolutely do that. But anyway, I can go get Swift right now. Seems like something I want to do. So I would explore that for sure, both of those things. And this was an interesting one. I saw some people agreeing with it, so there's opportunity out there for sure.
I like that.
Cool. All right, what's this next one? What do we got here?
San Francisco QB situation. What are you doing next season?
You want to talk about that? Yeah, this is tough, man. I like that. Brock Purdy and Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. Where the hell are we going to be? It depends on how they finish in the playoffs, right? Like if they make it through this round, I think there's a high possibility that they give him a shot to compete. That's Brock Purdy. Give him a shot to compete going into next year. If he wins the Super Bowl, then they're probably just going to give him the gig. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it like it's if you're going to go buy him, there's some risk involved in it right now. Trey Lance, I mean, do your worst. I have no interest in it, but I'm willing to be wrong on that one. You know what I mean? This is one of those situations that I can look back at. I definitely could imagine that I could look back and be like, man, I could have bought low there, but I didn't like him before the injury, and I don't like him after it. So I'm kind of out.
Now, can you see any team try to make a play for Purdy?
No.
No,
And
I mean,
it's sorry, you're right. It's not in San Francisco's best interest.
Oh, of course not. He's a young quarterback who will be under control. There's no question about that. But right now, his value is probably highest than it'll ever be. So
it is. So when it comes to Dynasty, Purdy's a guy that like I'm kicking myself for not trying to pick up off waivers. Looking at what he's done now, but like realistically, how could you predict that to happen, right? He was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason. Yeah. And he looks okay. He's got kind of a noodle arm, but he runs that offense pretty well. But I think we've seen it. I mean, Shanahan and the offensive coordinator, that whole team. I mean, they're just playing lights out on both sides of the ball. And when you have defensive coordinator just constantly perfectly matching up against the other team's offense, that makes whatever the offense is doing when they get back on the field a whole lot easier, right? And I'm not saying Brock Purdy hasn't earned our respect or whatever, or the clout that he's getting because he's looked okay. But I mean, I don't think if 32 NFL teams passed on him every single round of the NFL draft, that like all of a sudden this last 4 games or last 5 games are like, oh, well, I'm going to go out there and mortgage my future for Brock Purdy to run my team. I don't think Brock Purdy looks as good if he's starting for Arizona or if he's starting for Houston or any of these other teams. I think we have to give credit to Kyle Shanahan. We've seen him do it over and over. He's a really good coach, and he puts really good coordinators alongside him. And I think that's kind of helping Brock Purdy look a little bit better than maybe he is. With Lance, so I'm trying to walk you through here. With Lance, it's about what we talked about with draft capital. We can't forget that they traded 3 firsts to get Lance.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they're, I mean, just from not looking embarrassed and stupid, the scout team, GM, all the way up to the top, the same year, is it the same year? No, it's not the same year. But you go and you spend 3 firsts for Trey Lance, who hasn't played 2 seasons for you, and now all of a sudden you're starting the dude who was the very last pick in the draft, and that's who you're rolling out there. I mean, good on you for like being able to admit your mistakes and move on, but man, it makes you look really inept. And I don't think that front offices, GMs, coach, scouts, player personnel guys really want to have that kind of egg on their face. So whether it's right or wrong for the team, I believe Trey Lance is going to get the shot immediately next year. They just kind of have to. It's that sunken cost. Like you have to roll him out there to prove that you're right. And I think that's what will happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Totally. They could end up trading Trey Lance if they believe in Purdy and trying to save face like that, making it somebody else's problem, possibly getting, a first, a couple seconds, whatever it is in return. And then maybe they don't look like they have egg on their face if he goes out and doesn't really perform. You know what I mean? And they actually got something for the asset. Yeah. So it can go a couple different ways here. I really don't know, and I have no interest in buying Lance personally, but I do understand people why they would, and there is opportunity for sure. Brock Purdy, too expensive now, right? I mean, you cannot get him for a second. There's no way somebody's gonna give him up for a second, and you can't trade a first for him. Like you can't feel good about doing that. So you can't do it. But we haven't talked about Jimmy Garoppolo yet. What do we feel about Jimmy G? Because I mean, Brock Purdy may be showing like anybody can do it in this offense, but Trey Lance showed that some can't, and CJ Beathard showed the same thing, and others who have been there haven't been, dominating like Purdy has. They are, humming on all cylinders right now. But that said, I think Jimmy Garoppolo has shown enough this year in a tough situation where he was, the backup till Trey Lance comes in and absolutely plays great before he gets injured. I think he's going to get a gig somewhere. No, like I feel like there's look at all the backup quarterbacks starting in the playoffs or right up into the playoffs. He's got to get it.
He's going to Tampa.
Okay.
He could. Yeah. Trying to guess where he go. I mean, it's just fun to do, but like we have no idea. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Jimmy G is going to be back in San Francisco. That's for sure. I think he's probably done there.
Yeah.
I don't know. You could see any number of teams again, like the Jets. You could see that Houston, although they should probably draft one. Tampa Bay could use one. I think Tampa Bay should bring back Jameis Winston and run it back. But
I think so too.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
For everybody involved, fantasy too.
But for Dynasty, I think that investing in Jimmy G is not a bad idea. Like, he's going to play somewhere.
What can you acquire him for, though? Because, do you really feel good about sending any kind of second for him?
Yeah, if I knew. I'd be more, like we talked about Tom Brady. Would you send a second for Tom Brady? Like, I would be more willing to move an equal pick for Garoppolo than Brady.
I don't know.
I know. I mean,
I feel like I have.
League.
Go ahead.
Garoppolo could be in the league for another 3 years, 4 years, depending on where he goes. Brady might not be here next year. I don't know. Like, I don't like that uncertainty.
Brady blew up his whole family. He is going to play football for sure.
What else does he have to do? He can't go home.
I mean, I guess there's a possibility he could take $50 million a year or whatever and go to the booth or something like that. But I have a feeling he'll be back. I have more certainty that he would be starting somewhere that I am excited about than Jimmy G. Like, Jimmy G could easily be Houston's quarterback or something like that, or
Sure.
a backup somewhere. You know what I mean? He could be another backup for a shaky situation and then fall into a starting role again, something like that. So I don't know, but he also, he also could end up on Vegas just as well as Brady could, I guess, right? Like, it's definitely a possibility. So I'd like to get away with trying to acquire any of those guys for less than a second, but it might be impossible. I don't know.
Probably a waste of time.
That's tough.
One more thing.
Waste of time. Waste of time. Damn. All right. All right. Shut off the pod. Shut off the pod. We're done.
Then we're done. Thank you for listening to this.
This is all a waste of time.
One more thing about Brock Purdy that kind of, I don't even know. I didn't know. I realized I had these strong feelings about him, but maybe it's because my Dallas Cowboys are playing him this week. That's probably what it is. But
that's definitely what it is.
But I remember a certain Minshew when he started playing. Nick Foles got injured week 1.
Mm-hmm.
Minshew came in and had a pretty good season, and he looked pretty good. Yeah. And he was undrafted, later drafted guy. And immediately, as soon as they could, they shipped him off.
Still mind-blowing, but yes.
That could happen with Purdy just because of the cost. Like, if they could get a conditional 4th or something like that, they've won. They have profit. That's what we do in Dynasty all the time.
So who did you just mention that he's that
Gardner Minshew?
Minshew.
Oh.
Well, I mean,
okay.
And Minshew, he had the same thing. Like, at the halfway through the season, if you wanted Minshew, you were sending like a late first for him because he's a starting quarterback and you never know what's going to happen. Nick Foles is gone. He's going to be the starter.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you realize, well, this team doesn't have anything financially invested in the guy. That doesn't mean anything to them. They could get whatever they get for him and move him on, whether it's best for the team or not. And I feel like that very well could happen with Purdy as well. So that's kind of what scares me. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Very similar situation.
I mean, the Jags fell ass backwards into Trevor Lawrence the same year that this happened.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's obviously not happening with this situation, first of all, where they're, like, bringing in – I mean, I guess technically you could say Lance is that situation, right? They're bringing back Lance.
Yeah.
But again, if Purdy leads them to an NFC Championship plus, it's going to be hard for them probably, especially if he continues, putting up points. Like, he's, throwing 200 plus and a couple touchdowns a game, like, and he's not just sitting back there and letting CMC do it all. Then, despite what we know and what is obvious, like, this shouldn't be happening and they shouldn't do this. Like, I think it's going to be hard for them in the face of that to be like, yeah, ship them off for, a third or whatever like that, which they totally could do. But yeah, I'm not willing to spend a lot on him. I already said that, but I think that this is just one of those very unique situations. I'm not sure we can compare it to anything else because who have we seen other than Brady, take going like a Super Bowl run out of nowhere like this as a rookie, first, second year player, or whatever. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. All right.
Cool.
Well, that situation is absolutely jacked up. All right. Let's talk about we just look, it's the off season. Everybody's kind of taking it easy, waiting for these things to calm down to strike at the right moment. But we do have the trade
smart.
here. It is smart. It is smart. We do have a DU2 trade here though. And this got done as I was actually trying to acquire Burrow for a trade that we talked about last week. And then I modified it and sent over some absolutely ridiculous overpay. And then this got accepted. So screw me. All right, so this was Joe Burrow for Geno Smith, Tyler Algier, Aaron Jones, and a 23 first. We haven't done the order yet, but I'm pretty sure it's like pick 8. So let's say 1.08 Geno Smith, Algier, and Aaron Jones for Joe Burrow.
Burrow side all day, every day.
Yeah, that's like what if you're lucky. 2 firsts total for Burrow. That's a smash. This is not your trade. That's right. This is not your trade.
Unfortunately.
Dang. You couldn't put it together a better trade offer than that.
So let me ask you, so would you rather that deal, or would you rather Derek Carr, George Pickens, Tony Pollard, and like a second or something?
What was it? What was your offer again?
My offer was Derek Carr, Tony Pollard, George Pickens in a second.
I mean, I don't love that. I would still be sticking with Burrow. Yeah,
I still want Burrow, but I'd rather have the Carr side versus the Geno side.
Obviously, everybody would rather have the Burrow side of both of these, both of those deals. But what really I'm saying in terms of which one you would have accepted.
Oh, for the return, probably your deal.
I guess maybe, but the this offer includes a first, and you know what that number 1 in front looks like,
But isn't Pickens essentially 23 first?
Maybe some people. There's something about being able to pick your own player.
That's a good answer. No, that's a good answer.
It's about being able to pick your own player. You hold the 108, like that could be anything, right?
But this is the whole boat meme thing from Family Guy.
You either have a boat or a box. Some people want a box. I don't know. It's crazy season, so But I mean, whoever got Burrow for this, like, great job. So
I told the dude who traded Burrow away, I was like, I'm really surprised you took that one instead of my deal. But and honestly, he could have hit me back, and I probably would have thrown something else in too. I probably would have thrown like Brandon Cooks. Here, have him too. Here, just throwing receivers at you like ninja stars, dude. Just
oh my god.
Oh my goodness. All right.
That's a good trade for this time of year. I like that.
Right? No, it is. It is a good one. Getting into the draft and all that. It's definitely interesting.
Hey, look at that at the bottom. Josh has got a little banner going across the bottom now. Getting better.
Hey, that's fire. Yo, like I know we have viewers and stuff. Like y'all can comment. Like we will see them and we will talk about them and stuff.
We do not bite.
Yeah, please comment.
Speak for yourself, Josh. All right, speak for yourself. All right, it's a little bit shorter one this week. It's the off season, but so you're gonna get some of those. We'll have some fun stuff next week. Josh, take us out.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode of Dynasty Underdog. Follow us on Twitter at Dynasty Underdog, at Uriah Dawkins, at William DFF, and at Josh M. Goldberg. Tune into our live stream on Twitter and YouTube.
Hell yeah! Have a good night, guys.
Peace out.
Nice. Later, guys. Yeah. YouTube. All right.